I honestly don't know if this film's going to be released in the US, which would be an absolute shame, because this has been released in the UK. I have just seen it, and I will say to everyone in the UK to see this movie, take your kids to see this movie, and everyone, in America and everywhere else, do your utmost to see this movie. I would rather you paid for it, but obviously if you can't, I don't know if this is coming out. All I know is it's been released in the UK, and I was blown away by this Pinocchio. So this version is directed by Matteo Garrone, and I was intrigued ever since I saw the trailer. I really liked the trailer, and I was happy when I saw that Roberto Benigni was in this, because he is in Life is Beautiful, which I think is one of the greatest films of all time too, which you should all check out. But I was not prepared for it to be this great. This is one of the best films I've seen in the last 5 years, possibly 10. I am still, honestly, in a bit of a daze from this. This is one of the most charming, wonderful, lovely, dark, uncompromising, sincere versions of a fairy tale I have ever seen. It's probably the best version of Pinocchio. I mean, we all love the Disney cartoon, but for me, this is my personal favourite. I'm still in shock. I am still in shock. I think this is a masterpiece. I actually think this is a masterpiece. So yeah, see it however you can if you're in the US. I really hope they release it over there, because it is so earnest. It is such a sincere portrayal of the fairy tale. Doesn't pull any punches, but it just has this wonderful fairy tale atmosphere all through the film. It might be the most fairy tale looking film I've ever seen. The tone in this is wonderful. It's almost got like that Return to Oz tone, where it is a dark film. It's a dark film, but when it wants to be sweet, when it wants to be charming, it really, really is. I love the look of Pinocchio in this. I love the practical effect of Pinocchio in this. I love how the director was absolutely adamant on using practical effects for most of this. Pretty much every character you see is practical effects, and it transported me back to a time where you saw all those practical effects in children's movies. It's just more real, it's more involving, it's more, it connects with you on a deeper level. And I really related to Pinocchio here. If he was running around as a CGI model, I think one of the strengths of the Pinocchio story is that you really believe in this puppet, this puppet who wants to be a real boy. You have to actually see him there in order to actually want him to become human, and I know this review is going to be all over the place. I'll be baffled if the Disney version that is upcoming also is better than this. I'll be baffled. As I say, this is not compromising in the slightest. Pinocchio is a pretty dark story, and no punches are pulled. There are many moments in this where I heard children in the theatre gasp. And one of the most wonderful things about this is at the start of this movie, I could hear children shouting, screaming, talking, this and that, running around. I could, hear footsteps. The film started, and they went quiet. They went quiet, and they gasped at these dark moments. And I really do feel like that you should have dark moments in children's movies. You really should. Children should see that side of things. They really should. They like that kind of being allowed to express the fear that they have. Childhood can be a very scary time, and I feel like Pinocchio is a story about that. It's about the confusion of childhood. It's about the joy of childhood and the happiness, but it's also about the confusion. It's about the stress, about the fear. And I feel like fairy tales and films like this are ways for children to kind of, watch that fear played out on screen and relate to it. I was just so impressed by the effect it had on the children. Maybe they just decided to start bloody well behaving in the cinema, but I think this film captivated them. I just felt such a sense of there was an aura going on. It was a really special moment watching this film, and I will treasure this film watching experience probably for the rest of my life. Roberto Benigni obviously plays Geppetto, and it's one of the most sweet and wonderful performances I've seen in years. Roberto Benigni is a very likeable guy anyway, because Life is Beautiful is a very optimistic film, very happy film, but very uncompromising. And again, I feel like he's a guy who he takes on those roles where he's the light in the darkness, and that's what Geppetto is in this. Every time you see him, you have a smile on your face, and the tenderness of that relationship works so well. You can tell Geppetto's want to have a son, and his love for Pinocchio. He really does adore him. Alido Balderi Calibria plays the fairy in this, obviously the blue fairy from the tale, and you know, she plays the blue fairy as a little girl. Obviously we see her growing up in this as well, played by Marine Varch, and both performances are so charming, and every character in this is so charming, every character in this is so natural, every performance is so wonderful. And again, you know, the fairy's love for Pinocchio, she sees past his flaws, she sees the good heart inside, she knows how much he wants to be a real boy, but she puts him through trials and tribulations. And you know, it's a movie about holding on to optimism in the bleakness of how things can go, and Pinocchio goes through some real shit in this. You know, there's one moment where the fairy is observing Pinocchio going through one of his trials and tribulations, and she has a tear come down, and that was just a devastating moment. You know, just the way she looks at him, she admires Pinocchio, because he's a fascinating specimen, isn't he, this alive puppet. There's David Morota as Jiminy Cricket, the talking cricket, and he's quite sinister and dark in this, but again, he's good-hearted. And you know, they don't make the characters look that welcoming, they make them look a bit morbid, they make them look a bit creepy, because again, the essence of all great fairy tales is that a little bit of a sense of creepiness. We would not make this film in America. The Disney version will not be like this, because they don't want to do it. They're not interested. You know, there hasn't been a film made like Return to Oz since Return to Oz, really. Disney have no desire because they're just safe, whereas this was a passion project. I know it was. Roberto Benigni's been involved with the Pinocchio story for years. He's been involved in other adaptations of Pinocchio. He obviously loves the story. You know, and this Italian version, you know, the ambition of it to create such a accurate portrayal of the book, to not lighten it up, you know, and to actually go, right, this is what the book was, and this is why it connected with children, this is why it endured, because it didn't talk down to them. This movie that doesn't talk down to children. And you know, I feel like despite all the woe and the madness and the creepiness, Pinocchio is always there, so the children have always got Pinocchio to relate to and to feel safe in and to go on the journey with. The sets and locations, the movie doesn't go over the top with it. There's a sense of ground level to this, which I was really impressed with. There's a sense that we don't want this story to get above its station. It's quite an insane story, loads of crazy stuff happens, but it, you know, there's not colours everywhere, and there's not stuff everywhere, and it's not trying to make this grand, you know, craziness. There's a somber tone to this. Not many colours, but the colours that there is stand out. And you know, again, it's an attempt to make an authentic take. It's not an attempt to make this really, really like crazy, happy and up in the air. No, and through doing it in that way, for me, the visuals stand out more. There's so many wonderful shots in this. You know, I love the shot of Pinocchio finding the money tree, where he's jumping around, you know, trying to get the money, get the coins out of the tree, and it's so simple, so sweet, but so mysterious. And it, you know, sometimes you just have to do that with visuals. You want to have spectacle, but you need to have it simple and ground level and mysterious. There's real magical moments in this. I really feel like the director feels the need to, at times, just show things in their element. Just show the world passing by, just show Pinocchio's journey passing by. There's, you know, moments in this where it just shows Pinocchio walking, you know, with such a affecting score, such a wonderful, sweet score. That's all we need to see him do on his journey, you know. And you know, there's scenes where it just show him working, you know, mixing milk and, you know, pushing along the milk machine, and the movie takes its time to actually show things happen, to not just throw things in your face, you know, and I feel that it brings out the magic, you know. And there's a scene where obviously Pinocchio's nose grows for the first time, and the birds fly in and start pecking on it. There's a magical sense to that scene. There's a magical splendour to it. There really is, and it's done very simply. Again, you know, it's a great example where you don't have to have so many colours. You can have a muted colour palette, really, and you can still stand out and you can still captivate. And the movie strikes that magical spell that happens now and again in children's movies where they just get everything right. They get the right amount of innocence, the right amount of darkness, the right amount of performances, everything comes together, and it doesn't happen often for me. And it's a real kind of, it's almost unspoken, it's almost like a spell that a movie can cast when it gets a children's story right. And it just does in Pinocchio, it just does. And I'm really impressed with Matteo Garrone. He also directed Dogman in 2018, which is the only other thing I've heard of from him. I might have to do the director a favour and watch some of his films, because this, it's at the moment it stands in my favourite films. It really does, and that's a feat that's not easy. It really isn't. I don't know where it would rank in my favourite films, but it's in there. I'm so sad about this because I feel it's going to be a repeat of Ad Astra, where Ad Astra was just a staggering film which no one saw, And I completely agree with the Rotten Tomatoes for this. I think it's like 90-something%. Fully deserved, Seek out this film. And again, just a wonderfully charming performance at the core of it from Roberto Benigni as Geppetto, who will just make you smile every time you see him. It's a film that made me smile. It's a film that made me, once again, get that feeling of being a child and believing in magic. Thanks for watching, everyone. Please subscribe if you enjoyed. I talk about nostalgic movies usually on this channel, but I also review new movies. Thanks for watching, everyone. I'll see you guys next time.